So welcome everyone to Tell 82. Thanks for nothing. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, along with my partner, Donnie Jokum. Thank you. The Bureau just celebrated our 10th birthday, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's real. Thank you. What do I want to say? I'm really glad to have Tal back. We had a little hiatus, but Tal has been with us for much of our journey, dating back to 2014. Can you remember those pre-pandemic, pre-other thing times? No. Well, we are an all-volunteer organization, which means we ask for money all the time. And we're also splitting the money with all of our storytellers tonight. So it goes to a few folks. But the donations and the book sales, all of that helps us to keep going. So I don't know, maybe another 10 years. We'll see. We'll see if we don't burn out. We're going to try not to, with your help. But I'm going to pass this around. There's change in here. Give what you can. You can also, you don't have cash, you can send us money by Venmo at BGSQD, which is all around you in case you forget the order of those 5 letters. And that's it from me, except I want to say one more thing. If you're not on our email list, you can sign up for that at the register and you'll get an email every other Monday. Oh, and I also want to introduce the exhibition. So you are surrounded by the work of Catalina Schlieben-Aronius, satanic parent, which we love. And we've extended the show. It's actually going to go through February because Kata is publishing a book of the series Satanic Panic. So we'll have a book launch closing in early February. Another good reason to sign up for that email. And with that, I welcome to the stage Drae Campbell.
Yeah. Oh, hi, live streaming. The live streamers are watching. It's like nobody on me watching. But we're streaming anyway. Hi. Are you out there? You can't tell, right? Fix that. Hi, everybody. My name is Drae. How many people have never been to Tell before? Yay, welcome and thank you. Yay, welcome, yay. Tell's queer storytelling, queer people telling their own queer little stories. So we're basically kind of going beyond the coming out stories. 8 years of people telling stories on, you know, whatever their lives are, stories from their lives. We've had, you know, lots of dildo stories, mom stories, fucking in bathroom stories. It's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I always enjoy seeing octopuses on the wall. It used to be nothing but dicks, and we've expanded, right? Yay! Pussies and dicks forever. Yay! That's the new name of the show. Just kidding. One of my, thank you. Hi, YouTube. Yeah, that's fun. What else can I tell you? How's the midterms feeling for you? You feel pretty good, right? Mixed feelings, midterms. We got through that. At least, I mean, it's like, I feel like every time something happens, my sentences start with at least, and it's, well, we're not dead. We made it through another large scale event. Here we are. Democracy has not completely fallen. And that's a blessing. So that's exciting. A lot of good things did happen. Got some queer governors, right? First Black governor in Maryland, yes. Woo. Lesbian governor in Massachusetts, right? Is that right? Yay! Yeah, give it a shot. Why not? Jam. What else can I? So this is show is, as you know, right before the big holiday that is called Thanksgiving. So I decided to call it Thanks for Nothing as a sort of spit in the face to that, because we all know why. I don't think I need to explain that, but you know, I also asked the story, every month we do the show on a different theme. I asked the storytellers to come up with a story on the theme of Thanks for Nothing. And I have a little bit of an, like a little anecdotal, a short story, if you will. So on that theme, I, during the pandemic, if it's over, during, I guess, the heart of the pandemic, 2020, I guess, I had a breakup I started dating the person in January of 2020, right? And then it was like, next thing you know, we're in Cape Cod on lockdown together. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And it was like we were living together. And then, so of course we broke up shortly thereafter. And then we had the breakup in August of 2020. So then I was just pre-vaccine, terrified. I have like a little heart condition, so I was extra scared of like getting the COVIDus. And so I was just really like not around a lot of people, extremely vigilant, as I'm sure a lot of you may have been. And I was felt like I can only say this in retrospect, I wasn't being seen, I guess. So, and I was really the way I managed that was constantly looking in the mirror, and like, I mean, more than usual. I mean, but just like and I have a full length body mirror, and I was just constantly looking at it, and constantly like, I went through this phase of like over assessing my body in a negative way. And I was just obsessively like looking at the mirror, taking pictures of myself, like looking at myself from all angles, going through like, I guess like dysphoria, dysmorphia, and it was getting, and I historically didn't have a lot of that in my brain and in my system. And I kind of like chalked it up to like, it's just me in the mirror. Just, oh, what are you gonna do today? Jerk off and then look at the mirror. That was like, that's my to-do list. Everybody knows that's what you did too. So, but to be fair, I jerked off and then looked in the mirror. I didn't look at myself, you know, baby steps. I don't know what that means. So what happened, I guess I want to say about 6 months ago, and I'm also very superstitious and a little like anxious about like, doing little rituals, because I'm an actor. I'll have to do certain things before I go on stage or whatever, nervous and superstitious about mirrors breaking specifically. I'm like, that better never happen to me. Like, I was like, that is the worst fate. A mirror cannot break. Like, I thought it was really going to be like this terrible curse. And so one day I was taking a shower and the mirror was hanging off of a door right outside of my bathroom. And I just heard a big crash, and I saw my dog run, like she was frightened. And I saw that the mirror, this full body mirror, had fallen off and broken. And I was so freaked out and so like scared that I was going to be cursed by this, this mirror superstition. And then like when I got a little space, and I did not replace it. I don't have a full length mirror in my house now. And I didn't replace it. And I sort of like, the more distance I got from it, I was like, that was like a little curse of my own that I broke about looking at my body. And I was like, thanks for nothing, mirror. I'm done with you. So that's my little story of getting through COVIDus times and body fun stuff. The journey continues. It's not like I'm cured. Because I do live in this society and this world. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you for listening to that story. Are we ready for our first storyteller? And before I bring up the first storyteller, I just want to remind you, I love Donnie and Greg. They have been a nurturing force in my life and in Intel. And they sell amazing things like Butch Lesbians of the 20s, 30s, and 40s coloring book. as well as the butch lesbians of the 50s, 60s, This for Sale, as well as so many other amazing books. And I always like to say that like we constantly have to queer the narrative, and going through difficult times, we're literally surrounded by stories of people who have been through equal and worse things. And we're surrounded by these stories, and we have to keep telling these stories, keep queering the narrative. And that's my little spiel about that. And I'm going to bring up our first storyteller, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Are you ready? Okay. You're a little quiet tonight. Hi, everybody. Yeah, ooh, I love that for you and for me. Okay, where is the first? Okay, the first storyteller. Dun, 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 Belle. Okay, yeah, that's right. This is Belle's first time at Tell. Belle is a multidisciplinary artist from Ireland, working as a drag performer, visual artist, mediator, and facilitator in Brooklyn, New York. They have a background in clown. Yes. Oh, Gaulier and Lecoq, to be exact. For those who know clown. Okay, Lecoq is serious. I didn't realize you were a clown person. That's amazing. And trained in the theater of the oppressed at Goldsmiths and with Ulex in Spain. Belle has performed throughout the UK and Europe, co-creating Womb with a View for Shambala Festival, creating and performing Spectrum, a show about revolutionary thinker and autistic advocate Temple Grandin, for Edinburgh Fringe, and performing in Dada for Girls, where they won Most Outstanding Performance, yes, and Most Groundbreaking Performance. They are currently working on a series of portraits called People Are the Worst, tattooing, performing with their drag comedy group, Earls to Girls and We're for Men, and writing film. Everybody, please give it up for Belle.
Thank you. I just want to say that my wife wrote my bio, and my original bio went something like, "Oh, I don't know, I haven't done anything. I have a dog, and yeah, well, I can teach. I taught her how to hold chips on her face, and I felt very resistant to having to write one. So we can thank Cara for writing that bio that is far too generous. So this is my first tell. And I've also pretty recently moved to New York, and America in general. So I thought it was appropriate to talk about the first time I ever came to America. So since I was a kid and throughout my teens, I've always had a little bit of an obsession with cowboys. I think I've always enjoyed the confusion of being sexually attracted to them and also wanting to be them at the same time. And ultimately them being my gender. And then when I was 20 years old, I finally met my first cowboy, or at least he sang country music, wore a cowboy hat, and had a beard, and he was from America. So that was good enough for me. He was from Ohio, which I knew nothing about, but in my mind it was like the Wild West. It was really, really fucking cool. So basically, I met this guy and then completely fell in love with him, and just thought he was so cool. We had a very short fling over like a couple of months, meeting all over Europe, and then he went back to America to his wife. And then I went back to my life, and I had 3 months of school left. Actually, Jacques Lecoq, I had 3 months of my schooling left, which was like the most important 3 months of my schooling, which I really should have buckled down on. But I was just obsessed with getting to America. You know, when we left each other, we kind of left it at like, we might never see each other again, but our paths will cross if we're supposed to be together, this kind of thing. So I made sure that our paths were going to cross again. So for 3 months, I saved every single penny I took. I got 2 more bar jobs and didn't put any work into my school life, and just obsessively tried to save every penny to get to America. And then I managed to get enough money for the flight, and I booked a flight to go to America for 2 months, and then I saved up $800. So I had $800 to travel around America for 2 months, which felt like loads to me at the time. So I made this extremely vague plan that I would just kind of hitchhike around, maybe get the odd Greyhound, make friends with people, And whoever I met would obviously just let me stay at their house. So I was like, that'll be fine. It'll be great. And then eventually I'll just show up in Ohio and be like, oh, hey, wait, you live in Ohio? That's crazy. And then we'd have a completely chance encounter that was just total synchronicity. Hold on, let me take a little notes. Okay, yeah. So then I came to New York.
Oh, sugar. Yeah.
Hey. So it was all set. I flew off to New York. I arrived in New York City, and then I ended up at this rooftop party. I met a guy. We call him like Josh. So I met Josh at a rooftop party. And Josh heard my whole story and he was like, oh my God, dude, if you're traveling around, you have to go to Asheville. Asheville is like the freaking coolest. And if you go to Asheville, like you have to hit up my friend Ryan, because Ryan is like also like the coolest, dopest person you'll ever meet. And he will totally freaking hook you up. I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, sounds fun. So I take Ryan's number and lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, I do end up in Asheville. I get a Greyhound there and I get off the bus and I call up Ryan, and Ryan's immediately very, very receptive, and he's like, just wants to come and meet us, and it's like, yeah, you can come and stay, you can stay for me as long as you want. And then he's like, oh, we're about to go up to the Smoky Mountains. He's like, do you want to come up with my friends to the Smoky Mountains? And I'm like, yeah, of course, that sounds incredible. Yeah. So 15 minutes later, this car pulls up with like 8 18-year-old boys all squished into the car. They're like, hey, I'm like, hey, cool, right? So I squeeze into the car with them and we go on this trip up the Smoky Mountains to go swimming to their favorite swimming hole. And it's stunning, like it's absolutely beautiful. And we finally get to this little bit of the forest where we're going to walk through and go swimming. And when we get there, there's like this gorgeous 50-foot waterfall, and at the base of the waterfall is where they like to swim, but we're at the top of the waterfall. So I'm kind of, well, how do we get? He's like, dude, we jump, that's hard. I'm like, fuck no. He's like, it's fine, like we'll go first. So I'm like, all right, and they all jump off very, very gracefully, diving, jumping into the water. I'm like, fuck, I do not have this kind of coordination. And I'm like, these fucking 18-year-olds can do it. I can do it. Okay, I can do it. So I have a couple of false starts and then I just fucking jump. And I jump off the edge of this thing. But as I'm coming down, I can absolutely not keep my body straight. And I'm going like this here the whole way down. And then I hit the water at a full like seating position, just smack myself into the water so hard. Smack my tailbone and just like plummet down into the water. And I was like under there for like 20 seconds. And when I come up, I can still hear the like, oh, I do not want them to know that I really hurt myself. I just get decided it takes me like 10 or 15 minutes just to like get my breath back. And what I've fully bruised, like maybe sprained or cracked my coccyx. And this is at the beginning of like a massive road trip where I'm going to have to sit in the car for hours and hours. And I'm like, fucking hell. So then we get back into the car with these guys and I'm like this, just kind of sitting on one leg and trying to not sit on my butt. And then we go meet all of his girlfriends for drinks, which is just a bunch of kids hanging out in a car park, drinking like PBRs. It's incredibly lame, but I'm also like kind of laughing it up. I feel like I'm in like an American teen rom-com movie. This is true. So then me and Ryan eventually go home because I'm going to stay at Ryan's house, and we start driving back to Ryan's house. And like halfway along the drive, Ryan just starts freaking out. And like, this guy is very chill. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, is everything okay? And he was like, no, like my dad is back. And oh God, he was supposed to be away for 2 weeks. And he's back and I'm not actually supposed to go out. I'm not supposed to have people home. And like, and I was like, listen, like just don't even say that I'm here. I'll I'll fucking sleep in the car. It's not a big deal. Just like, don't just, he's like, all right, cool. I'm so sorry. So we get to his house and then we drive, go into the driveway, and then the front door opens, and this fucking terrifying looking, very aggressive, red-faced man with a shotgun in his hand walks out the front door. And he's just like, boy, where have you been, boy? I thought I told you never to bring people back here, boy. I bring the damn trash out. I was just like, Ryan gets out of the car, and I'm just like putting the car backwards and just trying to like hide in the back of the car. But obviously the guy has already seen me, and he gets out, and I can hear him like shouting with his dad, and he's like, you think I'm fucking stupid, don't you, boy? And it's just like, it's going on, and I'm like partly terrified, but also partly like totally thrilled, because I'm like, this is so surreal. America is such a cliche. Like, I can't believe this actually happened. The movies were true. So eventually they go into the house, and I'm like, fuck, do I just get out of here or do I stay? And I have no idea where we are. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm just going to sleep. I'll stay the night. And then as soon as the sun comes up, I'll get the fuck out of here. So I just put the seat down and I tried and sleep, not on my coccyx, on my front. And just like, get a couple of hours in. And then as soon as there's sunlight, I get up and just try and sneak out without anyone seeing me. And then I'm on my way out, and I just hear, where do you think you're going? I was like, what? I turn around and I'm like, oh, sorry, sir. Yeah, just thanks very much for your hospitality. Yeah, it's been great. I'm just gonna get out of your hair. Yeah. He goes, hey, come over here. Are you Irish? I was like, yes, sir. Yes, I am. He's like, come over here now. I want to show you something. I was like, okay. And I go over to him, and he's like, I'm Irish too. It's like, oh yeah, I know, I can tell. So he brings me into the house, and then brings me into his fucking basement, where he's like home brewing all of this beer. He's got like hundreds of glasses with Irish shamrocks on them, and stickers of shamrocks like plastered everywhere. He's like, you try. So then at like 8 o'clock in the morning on an empty stomach, me and this guy sat and drank about 4 to 5 pints each of his like fucking 8 to 10% homebrew shit, and got absolutely hammered, to the point where this guy was just like almost crying, like we were having a heart to heart about his kid. And I was telling him, I was like, no, you gotta be nicer to him. You know, he's a really kind boy, and you gotta be nice. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't really think about it that way. And I'm like, right, I need to make my escape. And then he gets real protective, and he's like, no, you can't be just staying with strangers. You got to stay in a hostel. You got to be staying in hostels. And I was like, yeah, no, I promise I'll only stay in hostels from now on. It was like, once off, and then he basically insists on leaving me to a hostel. So I'm like, okay. So him and Ryan drive me to a hostel, and then I like go into the hostel and then wait for them to leave, and then walk back out of the hostel again with my bags. And I'm like, all right, time to find some new friends. So I'm walking around trying to find some new friends, trying to see who looks friendly. And then finally I come across this little microbrewery. And I'm also a cliche. So it's still pretty early. I'm 5 pints in. The microbrewery, there's only 2 people there because it's early. And these 2 are like this amazing visual pair as well. They're very funny, very friendly. One of them is extremely skinny and lanky, and his name is Sean. And then there's another guy who's really massive, big, fat, juicy guy called Jesse. And the 2 of them are best friends, and they're just having the time of their lives in this pub. So I'm like, hey, friends. So I sit down with them, and I start, I tell them my whole story, and then immediately they offer their couch for me. And they're like, yeah, you can absolutely stay on our couch or whatever. And then a couple more drinks in, they get a call, and he's like, hey, do you want to go for a swim in the Smokies? I'm like, is this Groundhog Day? And I'm like 7 pints in now, and I've had a fucking weird 24 hours. So I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Smokies. So we get in the car and then we head back up to the Smokies again, and we're there, going for about 10 minutes, and then suddenly I start to notice that it looks a little bit different to the last time when we went up to the Smokies. It looks real fancy, and like the hedgerows are all trimmed, and I'm like, where the fuck are we going? It doesn't feel that mountainy. And then we get to these giant double gates, and my guy Sean, just pokes the intercom. Am I at the right level with this? He pokes the intercom and he's just like, hey, Kyla, it's us, let us in. And then the giant gates open and we go in, and it's this fucking huge mansion, like insane. Bigger, yeah, like again, stuff that you see in the films. Honest to God. And then we go to the back of the house. There's this big glass conservatory with a giant swimming pool, and they're having like an indoor pool party. I'm like, all right, swimming in the Smokies, cool. We're going, having a great time, and very, very quickly, Kyla takes like a real hard shine to me, and she like latches onto me, and she's like, "You are not staying with those boys. They are dirty and smelly, and you're not staying with them. You're staying with me." So that's what happened. And for the next few days, I was basically staying in this mansion. And so within 12 hours, I'd upgraded from like a seat in a car to a room in a mansion. I'm like, okay. And it was very exciting, very cool, lovely to be there, but it also kind of felt a bit strange. I felt like I was kind of like her toy or her pet. And they also had like maids, and the experience of being there was very, very strange. Like her dad was like owns like this massive timeshare company, and he used to be a big musician in the 80s. So they had one floor in the house that was just, all of the walls were just covered in guitars, and then there was like a giant grand piano, just like all of it not really being used. Just very, very surreal. So after a couple of days, I'm kind of like, well, I need to get out of here. So I tell her that I want to go to Charleston, and I'm just going to hitchhike, and it's been lovely, and I'm sure our paths will cross again. And so she agrees that she's going to leave me off at a spot where I can hitchhike to go there. And then within about an hour of that conversation, she gets a call from her dad, who is also her boss, saying that she has to go to a meeting in Charleston the next day. So she's like, just stay one more night, I'll bring you. I'm like, okay, whatever, that's easy. So I stay another night, and then we go to Charleston the next day, and then they put us up in this 5-star hotel. And I was like, I had never been in a 5-star hotel before that, and I've never been in one since that, so I don't know if this is normal. Has anyone here ever been in a 5-star hotel? Okay, well, it's pretty crazy. The room that we had 2 floors and a jacuzzi. And we had like this whole welcome spread with like champagne and chocolates. And I was like, okay, I could do one more night of this. I can just spend the night eating chocolate, drinking champagne, jumping on the bed, and had a sweet night with her. And then basically got up early the next day, left her a note, and went on my way. And then headed on to Nashville, and then basically traveled all around the South. And then got a ride share to Chicago with this very strange guy who claimed that he was a stunt double for Sonny Chiba, which I have no idea if it was true or not. And then I made my way to Ohio, finally, where I could continue my plan. So I arrived in Ohio, but at this point, I feel like something has changed, since I've been away for a month and a half, and I think probably since actually being in the South and meeting other cowboys, I came to the realization that this guy, Andy, was in fact not a real cowboy. And not only because, he was just a small town guy from Ohio, but also because he got extremely weirded out anytime I tried to fuck him up the butt. And I don't know, like, what cowboy is like a hard no on pegging. It doesn't make any sense to me. So basically all of my hopes and dreams of a cowboy romance were completely crushed. So thanks for fucking nothing, Andy. And also thanks for nothing, Ryan, for my fucking coccyx and your crazy dad. And I have one last note. 12 years later, I actually met for the first time a real, bona fide, authentic cowboy from Nashville, Tennessee. And I fucking married her. And now I come from a family of cowboys, so which means I'm at least a little bit cowboy too. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, please give it up for Cal. That was truly epic and wonderful. I could listen to you talk all day. Who else could just listen to Belle talk that accent? Woo! Pegging, all the things. I want to call that story from coccyx to cock. That was amazing. And your cowboy partner is also an amazing performer, Carol Leary. Yes, woo! Fantasy grandma over there who brought their grandma on stage recently, right? It was amazing. Anyway, yes, Belle, woo! Woo! That was epic and wonderful. I'm still processing it, actually. I'm worried about your coccyx. I was like, I'm in pain. That sounded so, how high was the drop?
50 feet.
Woo!
But it was sore for like a good year and a half.
A year and a half. Wow, I could see that. It's and did you hide it the whole time? Or were you like, dude, that hurt a little bit back there?
Well, I mean,
Wow. And how old were
new friends? I was able to go, oh, God.
you guys? I'm in pain. How old were you?
20.
Okay, and so all those guys were 18. Okay, 20. Wow. Wow. That's yeah. I think the movies actually lie in America is even crazier than the movies. I mean, yeah, we are just one big insane stereotype. Cliche. Yes, here we are. Yay! What was I gonna say? It reminded me of something, a story that I had. Oh, brains. We don't use them. Memories. I'm gonna tell that story later and bring up our next. Are we ready for our next storyteller? Yeah. Is our next storyteller ready? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna read a little bit about you first. Folks, Maya Suess. Yes, that's right. Is a performer, writer, and nonprofit arts professional who has worn all the hats. Most recently is the director of programs and fellowship at Apex Art, and for many years as managing director of the residency and artist collective Flux Factory. Woo! Her work has been shown at galleries, museums, film fests, bars, and more in the US, Canada, Europe, and Japan. Maya produces and MCs it's Unprofessional Variety Show, right? Okay, which by the way, it's coming up next week and you'll have to go. It's an amazing show and it's here in Manhattan. Unprofessional Variety Show, a quarterly variety show at the Parkside Lounge. Make sure you check that out. Okay, she was born on a small island off the coast of Western Canada, is a member of a co-op and ex-squat in the LES, Lower East Side, and is committed to being a part of keeping queer art alive and thriving in New York City and beyond. Everybody, please give it up for Maya Suess.
That sort of amazing. Thank you for that. Really loved it. Okay. Yeah, it's actually Unprofessional Variety Show is on the 4th of December, which is the next one. And I'm gonna rope you guys in. Okay, got that? Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you for having me here. I do want to give this a little bit. You know, there's multiple options, but that's not just. I think it's not that they don't turn, that I can't turn them, but you know, it's fine. It doesn't matter. We're good. I'll just like stand up tall. Yeah. So I look up fine, yeah. like, it was just tight. It's just like needing a little muscle. There you go. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thankfully, I'm starting my story with a thanks. So thankfully, I've never joined a cult. But I'm truly grateful for that because I've had 2 near misses in my life. The first one was when I was 4 years old and my parents just separated. And they were just seeking new communities and trying to find themselves as newly single people. So my mother got involved with stand-up comedy, a cappella singing, and Tibetan Buddhism. I'm pretty sure she was in love with the monk, or one of them anyways, and children see everything, so I know I'm right. My dad, on the other hand, became involved with an organization called the Dharmasara Society, which had recently bought a small piece of land on the little island where we lived to start a yoga center at the guidance of Baba Haridas, who we called Babaji. Babaji was an Indian guru who came to the United States during the 1970s, which was the golden age of cults. True story. And he basically taught classical Ashtanga yoga, and he wrote his answers to anybody's questions on a small chalkboard that he kept around his neck, because he had taken a vow of silence in 1952 and he stopped speaking then. So I spent a lot of my childhood at the yoga center. So I went to school there, and I performed in the annual production of the Hindu epic, the Ramayana. Every year it was my first ever performance, my first lines. And most of the people in my life at the time had Sanskrit names. So there was Sharda, Usha, Daya, Raghunath, Chandraprabha, Anuradha, Jaya, Sudarshan, Satyanand. Most of them were white. Most of them were Jewish. The last person, Satyanand, that was my dad. He went by that for a while until he later changed his name to Dancing Bear. But that is a story for another day. So thankfully, though, the yoga center wasn't a cult. And I know that because I checked using the Steve Hassan BITE model. So BITE stands for behavioral control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And you can look that up and go down the list, and there's all these sort of descriptions of each category, and you can check them off to see if the organization or group that you're a part of is at all culty. And some of the things kind of felt familiar, like there was, changing your diet or your name, as I just mentioned. But that was all pretty loose, and many people had multiple names or didn't have Sanskrit names, and I tell you, none of us went by the Ayurvedic diet. Babaji was not really a controlling guy. He was sort of like into laughing at the human condition, and he's like, I teach this tradition if you want to learn it, fine with me. So that's good. Phew. The yoga center was definitely guilty of cultural appropriation, but it wasn't a cult. So. The second near miss was more sinister and definitely a cult. Some of you may be watching the second season of The Vow on HBO. And it is the story of the very salacious and horrifying rise and fall of the self-improvement cult based in upstate New York, led by the super abuser Keith Raniere. If you've been watching The Vow, then you've seen and heard from one of the main whistleblowers, Sarah Edmondson. She's the person with the kind of shiny dark hair who in one of the recent episodes yelled at Nancy on her voicemail. So if you watch it, you know who I'm talking about. Well, Sarah is a dear old friend of mine. We went to high school together. We were in the theater company together. And the two of us got a little apartment, just us, when we both went off to college in 1996. A full 20 years later, in 2017, 21 years, Sarah texted me and she's like, hey, guess what? I'm going to be in the New York Times. Cool, I replied, not realizing that she meant a front page photograph with Keith Raniere's initials branded onto her pelvis. Very intense. Well, Sarah was in Nexium for 12 years, and she and I had kept in touch. Whenever she was in New York, we would go to her favorite little vegan cafe at this yoga studio near Union Square. She was a raw foodie at the time. And I later found out that one of the behavioral control elements was to keep women very skinny. Super gross. More or less, our paths had diverged by that point. I had come into my own as a queer femme performance art cabaret artist. And Sarah knew that I wasn't really going to get down with the trickle down ethics of the executive success program. Yeah, it's really brutal. But there was another reason. Even though Sarah was Nexium's #1 recruiter, top recruiter, there was another reason that she sort of kept me off her recruitment roles. And that's because we'd been down this road before. In my early 20s, Sarah got me involved with USANA, a multi-level marketing company selling vitamins. Oh, yeah. If you don't know what a multi-level marketing company is, or an MLM, it's also known as network marketing or direct sales or a pyramid scheme. You can think Amway, or what's really popular right now, essential oils. So, yeah, I mean, okay, where am I here? Essential oils. Yeah, so Sarah and I basically every month, I would get this big box delivered to my apartment from Utah, because that's where most of the MLMs are based, thanks to the Mormon Church, which keeps regulations really low, right? So this big box would arrive, I'd open it up, and out of a cascade of like plastic puffs would come antioxidants, probiotics, essential minerals, protein powder, power bars, some eye cream, some shampoo, and their $10 toothpaste. But along with all this vitamin swag, I would also get a brand new set of sleek 8x10 high gloss pamphlets that featured gleaming vitamins surrounded by happy, healthy, rich looking people. This is what Sarah and I would use for our business presentations. So the key to being a USANA associate was to recruit 2 people below you, and then to help them recruit 2 people below them. And then that would sort of expand outwards naturally, like a healthy rising. And all of those people would get a little bit of the profit, you know? And that would just sort of like, we would all get rich off that, and it would just sort of exponentially grow, right? But the problem with models like this is that the math doesn't add up. It's like if everybody gets a little bit of money, those products would have been bought and paid for 10 times over. The reality was that, and is, that the majority of these organizations, these companies, the majority of people who work for them or are involved with them actually lose money. And that was definitely the case for me. I spent way more money on vitamins than I ever earned. But I tried really hard. Sarah and I were business partners. We would call all our possible recruits. I had this little green plastic box with note cards, and each person's name was written down and their contact information and how many times I'd approached them and how they responded. Unfortunately, most of these contacts were our friends, family, and acquaintances. So talk about a toxic situation there. But if either of us got a hit, we would call up our potential recruit. We would bring them out to coffee, we would sit down with them. We would build rapport. We would find out what makes them tick, learn their hopes and their dreams. And then we pull out our shiny pamphlets, spread them out on the table, and we give them one of 2 pitches. It was a long time ago, so I'm not 100% sure, but if I remember correctly, the first pitch went something like this. Because of the overuse of industrial agriculture, our soil is completely depleted of nutrients, and it has become harder and harder for our bodies to get what we truly need out of our food. And yet it's very hard to find vitamins off the shelf that are actually made in a way that your cells can absorb them. USANA was founded by a doctor and scientist who is one of the world's leading authorities on degenerative disease prevention, cell nutrition, and immunology. Our products are rated time and time again by federal regulators as the top products on the market. USANA offers a family of products that can help you heal from the inside out and achieve optimal health and well-being. Gross. Yeah, so the second pitch was sort of framed the same way. First, you outline the kind of dire, state of human situations. Everything is sort of terrible, and there's no solution except for USANA, which possibly is the only solution. However, this pitch fit perfectly in with the poverty complex that has been passed down to me by generations of people who have struggled to find their way through capitalism. Yep, my hook was that fun mix of fear and financial illiteracy. And as a young artist who was just waitressing her way through grad school, the possibility of leveraged residual income and financial freedom seemed like it was worth a shot. One time, I convinced my dad to come with me to a USANA presentation. He was going by Dancing Bear at the time. He later changed his name to Arc 13, but that's for another day. So we jumped into his little car and we drove out to the Vancouver suburbs, and we shuffled our way into this recently out of business electronics store that was owned by this couple that was going to be doing the USANA presentation. They were a diamond associate. So similar to cults, MLMs kind of nudge your motivation by like offering these opportunities to climb the hierarchical ladder of ever more prestigious levels. So silver, gold, diamond, etc. So in the middle of the presentation, after a whole bunch of people witnessed, in the Pentecostal sense, to the power of the USANA eye cream, the presenter sort of turned to us and stirring up all of our financial neuroses or self-congratulatory feelings, whatever it was, they looked at us and said, "Can you imagine being 30 years old and not even having $1,000 in your savings account?" My dad and I looked at each other with what might have been a mix of embarrassment and recognition. I don't remember a ton of my time in USANA, but I definitely, that moment stood out. But I kept on going, I'd make my 10 calls a day and I'd do my presentations with Sarah. And I did manage to bring a few people into my little fledgling network. One of those people was Erin. Erin was a self-proclaimed clairvoyant who saw auras and talked to ghosts. And she and I actually went down to Salt Lake City for the annual USANA convention. Yeah. The year before, I'd gone with Sarah, and it was very inspirational, very motivating. The keynote speaker that year was Bernice King, the daughter of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. Not even kidding. So Erin and I jump in a rental car and we get going on those 15-hour drives south. And I was driving somewhere in the Oregon mountains. I hit some black ice and the car started spinning out across the highway, narrowly missing all these big rigs that were going by. We hit the shoulder backwards and we skidded about 50 feet, completely totaling the back end of the car. Unharmed, but completely in shock, Erin and I gathered up all our stuff. We got in the back of a cop car, which dropped us at a tiny motel in an even tinier town, from where we took the town's only taxi, which was a small black sedan carpeted with cigarette butts, to the Greyhound bus, which proceeded to drive us the remaining 8 hours. I don't remember anything about the USANA convention that year. I think actually I didn't even go. I just chose to hang out with my cousin and nurse my whiplash. But basically that trip kind of marked my end of USANA. when I got back to Vancouver, my heart just wasn't in it. Maybe if I'd gone to the convention and seen another motivational keynote, I would have like kept going for a little longer. Could have continued my fruitless attempt to find a hack to the conditions of capitalism. Almost 20 years later, I still haven't found that hack, but I'd like to think that I'm a little bit more savvy and can tune out some of capitalism's siren song of bad ideas. You know, now there are some decent tools out there. You can check out Steve Hassan's bite model, for example, or you can listen to my friend Sarah's podcast called A Little Bit Culty, where her and her husband help people, you know, recognize red flags. And they do actually have an episode on MLMs. And if you choose to listen to that episode, you'll know who she's talking about when she says that she regrets getting her good friend into one.
Maya Suess, give it up for Maya Suess! Wow, that was an extraordinary peep into a life that I really did not know anything about, that you really experienced for a lot of your life, it sounds like. I'm glad that you missed it, though. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Yeah, Maya Suess, everyone. MLMs. I feel like multi-level marketing schemes are like this toxic concentration of capitalism that's like, you made the perfect recipe of evil and put it all together. And yeah, I really felt seen by the poor working class. Like, I can do it. But a shame. It's going to motivate me. But you don't really realize that that's what's happening at the time. How's everybody doing out there? Is there anyone out there? Hi. Hello. Oh, there are? We love you. Thank you for being there. And by the way, you can go online and buy some of the many books that they sell here. Many, right? Yes. And you can too if you like at some point. I want to actually just because I love her so much, Cecilia Gentile, who is a frequent storyteller at Tell, has a new book out called Faltas, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm sure it's 100% amazing because she's one of the all-time greats storytellers and one of the all-time great queer activists, mothers of the queer scene out here. She's like basically made legislation happen that is saving our lives right now that we don't even know about. Cecilia Gentile, Faltas, everybody get it if you can. We love her. She's an amazing storyteller. And I'm sure like there's half of the people, we know half the people in some of these new books here. Like that's how community we are and how small the queer world is. Wait, I want to pass the bag one more time just in case there's the bag out there. Pass it around, kids. Throw some cash in if you can. It goes to the storytellers and the bookstores, and out there in TV or whatever YouTube land, you can Venmo at BGSQD if you like. And if you already threw, just pass it on. It doesn't matter. I'm just throwing it out there just to a reminder in case anybody missed it. Are you ready? Yay, I'm excited. This is a first-time storyteller that has never been here before, that was recommended by a friend. And so far, he seems like a really wonderful and kind person, and I'm very excited. And I'm going to read a little bit about you. He's like, don't build me up too much, honey. Hold on. I'm going to read a little bit about you. How's everybody doing? Yeah, there's some good stories going on here. Okay. Tom Cole is a writer and artist living in the Lower East Side. Yes, Lower East Side. His work has been presented at Participant Inc., Petite Versailles, Thread Waxing Space, Art on Air, Dixon Place, Clock Tower Gallery, ICA Boston, Performa, and the Boston Center for the Arts. Ooh, he's highfalutin. He is a 3-time MacDowell Playwriting Fellow, yes, and a 2015 Edward Albee Foundation Playwriting Fellow. He heads the new play commissioning program at True Love Productions, where he has commissioned new work by Heidi Schreck, Jorge Ignacio Cortinas, Craig Lucas, and Sheila Callahan, among others. He co-curates Experiments and Disorders, a literary series at Dixon Place. We love Dixon Place. He has collaborated extensively with Anoni, most recently appearing in She Who Saw Beautiful Things at the Kitchen. His work has been published in several anthologies, including Grove Atlantic's Pathetic Literature, edited by Eileen Miles. Please, everybody, give it up for Tom Cole. Hi, Tom Cole. You want the mic stand? You might have to adjust it a little higher. Just a guess. Uh-oh, some papers fell. It's okay. We're very loosey-goosey here. Do you know anything?
So I'm so in awe of the other storytellers, both of you. I have to have everything written down and read it. So I feel like I'm cheating a little bit.
You're not cheating.
I'm actually reading from pathetic literature, which is on sale here. So I really encourage everyone to support the blog and support this. And thank you for having me, and thank you, Drae, for inviting me. And my mother was in one of those things called Shackley. Have you ever heard of Shackley? Has anyone heard of Shackley? And I remember there was this idea that behind Shackley that we all eat too quickly. And so they marketed this machine that you're supposed to look at it, sit at it, and chew as many times as this machine. Anyway, I forgot about that. And so anyway, I've always wanted to be in a cult. Maybe I want to. It sounds horrible. Now I've lost my page. So I'm reading from a larger story called the Tyranny of Structurelessness. And in this part of the story, I am trying to wean off of my antidepressants for the second time. Light change. I'm tapering from my off-label high dosages of Effexor, and I go from 375 milligrams to 300 milligrams, and I start to listen to the radio. And it is my sincere feeling that the radio, combined with the electromagnetic tear in my ass, in turn created a tear in the space-time continuum. We've all been transported to 1980. But I can't explain why. Maybe it's Y2K, maybe it's Zika, maybe global warming, or the Montauk Project, a recent governmental experiment where the scientists believe nerves in the sphincters, when combined with extreme Telsa coils, electromagnetic pulses, and radio transmissions, lend to psychic binding and a tear in the space-time continuum for the subject and everyone within a 25-foot radius of the point of insertion. And this is true if you Google it, I swear. Into the anus. It happened. Lots of people missing from public parks. And now I'm at 150 milligrams of Effexor. Thinking, like hours and hours a day nonstop since Wednesday. I've just had this breakthrough and I feel really happy right now. And I don't think it's an illusional breakthrough, but I'm going to finish up all my projects that are computer-based. And then in March, I'm going to quit my job. And I'm going to work on totally, step-by-step disengaging from doing stuff with computers that I used to do in other ways, like writing with a pen on paper or reading a book. And I will work, but I am not going to work in front of a computer. So that's just going to be my compass. And I'm going to stop listening to the radio on behalf of the electromagnetic tear in my sphincter. It's going to be an exploratory step-by-step process, kind of like a project. I think I'm going to do it. I wanted to tell you because I'm so excited because I've just been going through agonizing. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't live this life anymore. Light change. I read this essay called The Tyranny of Structurelessness by Joe Freeman about how when feminist consciousness raising groups tried a non-hierarchical approach to organizing, an unspoken tyranny arose that was much worse than if they just had some structure. 2 quotes from the essay. Contrary to what we would like to believe, there is no such thing as a structureless group. 2, people would try to use the structureless groups out of a blind belief that no other means could possibly be anything but oppressive. Light change. And as a child, I wanted to be a slave, to be tied up. I once handcuffed myself to a desk at school and said, someone did this to me. And I wanted to be split up. Night has 100 eyes, more like 1,000,000, I think. So a rough time, spiraling out of control, back to shooting up meth and sex where men beat the shit out of me regularly. And I knew I had to get sober. Let's see, ecstasy, GHB, Special K, pot, Jack Daniels, Xanax, meth. I used to think I wasn't shooting up a lot, but then when I ran out, I'd go to the drawer and smoke the blood out of all the remaining needles, and there were a lot of needles. The first thing that happened was that someone organized an orgy in my apartment while I was coming in and out of consciousness. So I don't remember anything, but I was physically active during part of it. And someone attending the orgy brought luggage with him. Turned out this luggage, all his belongings. So when the orgy was over, he was moved in. He told me he was from Iran, but I met someone later who said he's just a regular guy from Michigan. He carried a book in his back, History of America, and I only ever saw him eat avocado and M&Ms. And the day he moved in, my birthday, nobody from my real life remembered, but he knew. We sat on a bare mattress, stained, the orgy over. He took me in his arm and eating an M&M, his tooth fell out. Later, when I realized he was reaching the limit of squatters' rights, I told him if he wanted to stay with me, we both had to get sober. He pretended to love my dogs, like, don't kick me out. I can't live without your dogs. So I left out some drugs. I knew he couldn't resist. And when he did them, I asked him to move, which was kind of a dick move on my part. But he wouldn't go, he wouldn't budge. He'd leave for orgies. He was also hooking, I don't know, but he left bags and bags of stuff multiplying. When asked to leave, he'd cry. And we all know a crying queen is a scheming queen. I still didn't know his name. And this part about the name seemed insane, that in this part of my life, I was dispatching with the triviality of names. He went to a sex party, and while there I called, I'm getting in a car and bringing all your stuff. If you don't come meet me, I'm gonna leave all your shit on the street. We met at the Dunkin' Donuts on 8th Avenue and 24th Street. His home away from home. Wi-Fi, bathroom to shoot up in. I showed him his stuff in the trunk, gave him $200, and then paid the driver. He cried for the dogs, and then I never heard from him again. As soon as I was rid of him, I knew I loved him, wanted him back. We were meant to be together. God had brought us together. Suddenly it all switched, and I was besotted, forlorn, wanted to switch places with him. Freaky Friday, leave my body, go into his. The pain of detox I'd experienced for him once, and then again later for me, 2 detoxes. But in the end, I could only fix myself. Was sick a long time. Walking down 7th Avenue 6 months later, I ran into him, a pot-bellied, stumbling, carrying a folding table lamp for a reading, limp, drooped over, a dying plant, and around the bottom, a brown plastic bag, yellow ties leaked off like liquid. He didn't recognize me, and for completism, I wanted to walk up to him and ask him his name. I saw him trying to take a picture of the sunset with a flash. And I remember the orgy where I wasn't the star, even though it was in my apartment. Just gave him too much, so he'll pass out in the corner. I imagine he lives somewhere in the Southwest where the crystal meth is cheap and the living's easy. A ranch, but he has internet. One of those video chat rooms where people should shoot up in unison. Quantum physics event all over the world. Or he's probably dead. And the next 2 lines are crossed out, but I'm going to read them. I wonder if when people kill themselves, they don't leave as quickly. They circle around a bit. It's funny when you feel as if you don't want anything more in your life except to sleep or else to lie without moving. That's when you can hear time sliding past you like water running. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tom Cole. Wow. I'm speechless. That was really wonderful. Really wonderful. Give it up for Tom Cole. Thank you. Oh my goodness. What a night. I feel like I had this feeling like we're at this amazing museum and we get to see these 4 masterpiece paintings, and it's so much. It's amazing. It really is wonderful. Yay. Thank you all. I haven't done the show in a while, so I'm like, wow, stories are amazing. And I've been doing it for 8 years. So every time I do the show, I'm like, my mind is blown. And I want to remind you, for those who may or may not know, there's little postcards. I made into a podcast, and there's 2 seasons. That's right. And the stories are amazing. It's sort of like recorded from the live show and then sort of cut up and re-edited and grouped together in different ways on the podcast. And it's on Apple, Spotify, all the platforms, as the children say. And there's 2 seasons, and it's pretty amazing. There's a lot of like crazy, wild, super queer stuff. I don't know if you all know who Dusty Lynn and Shane. They both have stories, and they're just like crazy, wild fuck stories, like getting blowjobs in bathrooms, like fun stuff, you know. And then there's like sad, cute stuff, you know, about bows and bells and stuff. It's really fun. Not this bell, but other bells that we is our last. We're gonna bring up the last storyteller. Is everybody ready? Okay, so they have done the show before, and I just love their storytelling style. I also just found out that they're in acting school, which is so exciting, at the Neighborhood Playhouse. Does everyone know? Is it Neighborhood Playhouse? Yes, which is Meisner technique. Actors in the house, Meisner. Whee, yeah, that's like about being in the moment. I'm just going to read a little bit about you. I'm very excited. Hold on, where are you on here? Okay. Rexylafemme, aka Rex Renee Leonowitz, is a trans, multi-gendered, multi-genre writer, visual and drag artist, performer, organizer, and healer from Jackson Heights, NYC. As a working class gender abundant femme, Rexy's work is a love letter to NYC and radical communities grounded in a politics of resistance, healing, and resilience. In all of Rexy's creative forms, he explores the power of revolutionary love in the face of loveless political structures. Rexy is also a practicing witch and offers workshops and spiritual mentorship in divination, spell work, and building intuition with a focus on healing as a revolutionary practice. Everybody, please give it up for Rexylafemme. Yes. Yay. Do you want the mic, Steve?
Hey, y'all.
Oh my gosh, that freaks okay.
Excuse me. Hi, y'all. So I had kind of a hard time coming up with what to talk about here today, because I am a witch and I'm a healer and I'm a light worker. So I was like, I'm grateful for everything. You know, like every experience is beautiful and you can learn from it. And then my inner New Yorker was just like, shut up, like you're a bitch. Like, but so I was trying to come up with stuff, and a friend of mine was like, talk about your family. And I was like, oh God, you know. But so I am gonna kind of talk about family, like specifically mommy issues. So I wore my mommy's little meatball shirt, which has multiple meanings. There's so much that you can get from that. And also growing up Catholic and going to Catholic school. Because I've realized so much. I'm in an acting conservatory now. And I'm back in school after 10 years of not being in school, and it's a 9-to-5 program, and we're like, you know, breaking ourselves down and building ourselves up, and I'm having nightmares about Catholic school and all of my teachers and blah, 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 blah. And so it's like, oh, what's like continuing to like feed my shame and inferiority complexes and stuff. And it's like, oh, mommy issues in Catholic school. So so I grew up in Queens in a very large dysfunctional Italian and Irish family. My dad died when I was a baby, so I didn't really grow up with his family. I grew up with my mom's family, and she's one of 7. Yeah, like, you know, I came out of her womb and I was like ready to shine, and like I was dancing and performing all over our apartment and like in my grandmother's house all the time. I used to dance and sing to Pretty Woman every day for M&Ms from my grandfather. He had like this like little gold coin purse that he would give me. I didn't need the M&Ms, but like, you know, so I was like always I was like singing to Barbara Streisand and, you know, singing like I wanted to be Madame Rose from Gypsy, and I was just, that was like my whole thing. But I, you know, my family was, you know, there were alcoholics, money stuff, all this kind of stuff. So I didn't get as much attention as I needed or would have liked. Boo-hoo, thanks for nothing. So I like needed in school to be the perfect student. And so like I was just like obsessed with my grades and doing well. And like also part of like growing up in Catholic school is like, you know, if you don't do well, you're wrong. Whatever you love is wrong. You know, it was just like shame, 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 shame all the time. So like it really fit with this like persona of like being perfect. And in 2nd grade, what I realize now, I was in love with my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Costello. And she looked like Kate Blanchett and Carol. So when that movie came out, I was like, oh, okay, like everything, this is all making sense to me. Cool. And she was super sweet and like always like she smelled like the beach. And she had this like blonde hair. So, you know, growing up in the 80s and 90s in New York City, in Jackson Heights was like, in this Catholic community was like growing up in the 50s, and the school, it was the same. Like a lot of the teachers who went there were alum of the school and like in the church community. And so, you know, a lot of the folks who worked there like looked like they were, you know, straight out of the movie Carol. So she wore like these beautiful floor-length dresses and like silk, and also like the above the waist trousers with like beautiful long coats, and she had the blown under blonde hair. And in 3rd grade, the 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Marini, so she was Irish. Mrs. Costello was Irish. Mrs. Marini was Italian, a little bit taller, dressed almost the same as Mrs. Costello, with the same, they had 2 hairstyles, so the blown under down hairstyle, and then like the blown under with a clip in the back with the little bangs coming out. And Mrs. Costello like dressed in pastel, and Mrs. Marini dressed in kind of like blacks and browns and deep reds, so earthy tones. And they were best friends. And they would walk arm in arm a lot too. And I always was like, wow, I love them so much. They're so beautiful. Look at them, they dress the same. The trousers. But anyway, so I was in love with Mrs. Costello. I was like severely obsessed with her. Just all I would talk about after school. I sat in the 1st row, 2nd seat, and I was just like, I would after school like always asked her for a hug before I would, you know, get dismissed to my aunt, who everyone, you know, she was an alcoholic, so she would show up frequently like drunk to pick me up, and it was this whole thing. Like I feel like the whole school knew, but they were like, so anyway, she, I, a little bit like, sorry, I was her teacher's pet. And I remember, there was like always a lot of talk among kids, like, oh, who do you have a crush on? Like, who do you want to date? As if 7-year-old, as if whatever that was. And I always would like make somebody up in class because I didn't want to say that I was in love with Mrs. Costello because it just, it just didn't seem that. But yeah, so she was like my first love, my first obsession. And she was also a friend of, she was a friend of the family, sort of, because her mother was a Eucharistic minister and lector at the church, and my grandmother was too. So like my grandmother and her mom, Rhodey Shanahan, were best friends, were like really close friends. And so it was like, oh, Mrs. Costello loves you, blah, blah, blah. Like she's always talking about how great you are. And I was just like fanning myself all the time. But anyway, I remember there was like so I don't know if they were semesters or whatever in second grade. I got second honors instead of first honors. And so first honors is like, you get 97 to 100 and everything. You're getting A's and A pluses. And so second honors means you're getting like A's and maybe like a B plus or something like that. And I had like a total conniption. Like my report card came home and I like was totally inconsolable, having like a hysterical fit, crying for like an hour. My mom couldn't stop me. And she was just like, it's amazing, like it's wonderful, you're great, like blah blah blah. And I was like, no, my life is ruined, I'm terrible. And I'm finding, being in this acting conservatory that like I'm still like that, and it's still coming up. And it's just it's like really crazy because what we're learning there too is just like, our teachers are telling us all the time, like, stop trying to be a good student. Stop trying to be a good student. There's no right way, like just be yourself. But then also there's like everything is coming full circle because there's this teacher that I have, our music teacher, who I realized heavily reminds me of Mrs. Costello. And so I've been telling people, yeah, like if I were in second grade, I would totally be in love with this woman. And that's like me trying to tell myself that I have no, there's nothing wrong here. Like, oh, yeah. And the other night though, I had a dream about her, about my teacher, my current teacher, Kate. And it wasn't sexual. It was like, I was like at her house, and she, like, I had spilled something and then I felt really bad. So I was like, I need to do all of your dishes. Just like, let me do all of your dishes. And she was like, no, it's fine. Like, you're my guest, whatever, you spilled water, blah. And so I'm like doing all of her dishes maniacally. And like, I'm like, I don't have any feelings for this one. I don't know, like she's just my teacher. This is crazy. Like, why are you talking about, and this is happening in my dream world. And she's it's like, it is also kind of like a Carol, like a Therese apartment. It's like got like the old like porcelain sink, and there's like, the small kitchen and like kind of like bedroom with the like 1950s furniture and like pretty doilies on this bed that you can see from the kitchen doorway. And she just like lays on the bed and it's like, Rex, like, come here. And she like insists that I like lay down with her and like lay on her chest. And I'm and I'm in the dream, like just laying there on her chest, and I can hear her heartbeat. And she's like caressing my hair, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, what is going on? And I realize that I'm dreaming too. Like, so I wake up in the dream and I'm just like, oh, Rex, you're fucked. You gotta I'm gonna have to get through 2 years with this woman and act like I don't have some weird, strange, mommy related crush on this woman. And I have class the next day, and I'm just, I'm just content. I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, oh, this is just residual. Like, it has nothing to do. Like, it's just residual. Who cares? And I and I go to class, and we had modern before, and so our teacher, y'all might know, some of you might know her, but our teacher for modern is Christine Dakin, who is she's like Martha Graham's protege, and she's if Kate, our music teacher, is our fairy godmother, she's kind of like our evil stepmother, but really cares also. Like, she really cares, but she's like, we'll be she's 75 years old, and she's like 5 foot. She's shorter than I am. She weighs about 90 pounds, but she's so strong that she could like lift a truck and like throw it across the street. And you get into her class and it's just silence, and like she'll lie down and like from a lying position, like spring up and then tell you to do that, like onto your feet and then like do some. But so I had just had modern, and I was having a hard time. I'm just having a hard time in that class, like figuring out how to move and think at the same time. So I was like, I started class secretly, a music class, secretly crying to myself. And we did she had us do this like meditation where she was just like, love yourself, give yourself like kindness and compassion, and allow the music to fill your body and fill the room. And I'm just like crying. And then we were doing our warm up, and Kate decided to like have all of us face outside it. Like, we were standing in a circle, we face outside the circle so we can't see other people. We're doing our warm up, and she like is coming around to everybody doing like adjustments and some like light body work. And so this is like right after I had this dream, and she gets to me and she's like, is it okay if I lightly massage your neck? And I was like, oh my God, no. And so she's doing that, and I'm just, I just keep crying because of like, tough cookie mom, Christine Dakin, who didn't do anything. Like, she didn't say anything to me or anything. It was just my own perfectionism stuff coming up. But yeah, so she's just like, massaging my neck and saying all these like sweet things about how like, I'm doing really well and blah, blah, blah. And then she's like done and like, pats my shoulder, and I just like kind of like fell apart and was like melting, and it was crazy. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Let me get my notes. I'm just talking about mommy, like transference basically. And it's just crazy to me how much it's still so present. Especially like being like, like currently like 33 in this program, and just all of this stuff from literally like, 5 years old to now coming up in these like really funny ways. And I've just been also realizing the extent to which shame and perfectionism limit like what I've been capable of doing, or like desire, my desire, allowing myself to live out my desires and stuff. And it's just been really cool to like, I don't know, to let some of that go. But going back to modern and Christine Dakin's class, I realized recently through another dream the origin of my difficulty in dance class. So I kind of like sideswiped like movement work for a really long time, just because I'm like, oh, I don't know how to move, I don't know how to dance, I don't have any rhythm. And I, you know, in being in these two dance classes that we have, jazz and modern, you know, that all of that kind of like weird body stuff, shame stuff is coming up. And I'm like, what is this about? Where did this come from? Because I've always loved to perform. I was dancing when I was a kid. I've done burlesque, blah, blah, blah. And so after one night after modern, I had this dream, and in it, I was on there. So we were going into modern, and the dance studio was like this long room, and there was this stage, like this huge stage that was at the top of like 4 flights of stairs, but they were like it was like a maze. It was like a flight and then a drop off, and then like you had to walk to this other flight of stairs and then another. So it was this like maze to get to this to the stage, which was like had all of this like crazy strobe lighting on it, and there was like this like house music blasting, and Christine Dakin was at the top of the stairs at the stage with a microphone, and there was also one of those like horse like gymnastic horse saddle things, and she did this like elaborate move that like makes literally no, like it makes no logical sense because it was a dream. But so she's showing us how to, so this is like the saddle, and she takes her arm and she's like, okay, you're gonna do this, and then you're gonna put your other arm here, and then you're gonna flip your leg up and like do like a 90-degree rotation, and then you're gonna end, and when you end, like you're on top of the saddle, like, you know, it's so graceful, and she does it in 5 seconds, and she's like, okay, now do it. And she's also just like, and just have fun. So like have fun, relax and have fun. And so I'm like, there's like, for some reason, like 80 people in our class today. And so we're just like single file going up the stairs, being like, and I'm just like in my head, I'm just like, okay, just relax and have fun, just relax and have fun, relax and have fun. It's just this arm and that arm. And the strobe lights are going, and like this crazy music is on. And I get to the top of the of these staircases to the stage, and I'm like at the saddle. And like now the saddle is like really, it's like tall, it's like taller than me. I'm like looking up at it, and the music is going, and I realize we're being filmed too. And Christine's face is like on this screen at the side, just like looking down, like she always wears a mask in class too, so it's just her eyes. And I'm like, okay, just relax, have fun, relax, have fun. And I try to do it, and I can't do it, and I'm like, ah, and I'm like, whatever, it's fine. And then I'm trying to get down because we have like 2 runs to do. I'm like, well, I'm fine. And so I realize now to get down, there's like, if you've ever been to like Discovery Zone or Chuck E. Cheese or like a McDonald's play place, like the way to get down is like all of these like crazy tunnels. So you go through one, and then it stops, and you have to go through another, and then there was like a ball pit, and then another tunnel, and then we're down, and then we have to like figure out how to get back up there to do, you know, to do this whatever move on the saddle. And I woke myself up, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, this is insane. Like, am I really that stressed? But then throughout the day, I just like carried with me, relax and have fun, relax and have fun. So I got to, you know, Dakin's class, and I was like, this is my goal. And it was, you know, and I did a fine job. But I remembered that dream helped me remember that when I was in kindergarten, over the summer, I was in this, you know, our school St. Joan of Arc used to have like summer camp, which was basically just like for kids whose parents worked, and it was like at the school. And so my mom put me in gymnastic summer camp. That was like, you know, whatever, throughout 5 days a week while she was at work. And the guy who taught it, so it was a class of like literally like 5-year-olds. The way that I remember it was he was like 75 years old and had like a really gravelly voice like this, you know, and he was like, he had silver hair and he was wearing like jeans and a belt and like cut off, you know, like a shirt with like cut off sleeves. And I don't think this is probably not true, but like I remember him just like having a cigarette the whole time. And the saddle, we had to like get up on the saddle. And I was like, you know, I'm like 5'1" now. So at 5, I was probably like, you know, that tall. But I remember I remember that like there was one day when he was teaching us how to like get up on the saddle. And I couldn't do it because I was small, and you know, like it was not like a child's saddle. It was like an adult, you know, Olympic, because he was like, I used to train, you know, Olympians, and you know, he had this whole narrative of like how amazing he was and whatever. But he was like teaching 5-year-olds at St. Joan of Arc, you know, for 2 hours a day after school. But anyway, he yelled at me because I couldn't get up on the saddle, and like he, you know, he had like a whole fit. And I told my mom, and she came to, you know, she came after camp one day and like chewed him out and was like, how could you yell at a 5-year-old about, you know, not being able to, you know, whatever, like they're 5, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I remembered, I kind of like realized that the origin of this like movement fear came from that time. And so it was like this like revelatory, helpful thing. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling, but yeah, school. It's crazy. It's a lot. It's a trip. And I guess in conclusion, I'm just gonna try to manage my crush on our music teacher. And one last thing about Mrs. Costello. When I moved back to New York in 2015, when Carol came out, I had seen Carol multiple times. Like I was going to see it every weekend because I was like, this makes so much sense. I'm learning so much about myself. And I wrote like this like essay about Carol and Mrs. Costello and all this stuff. And I was like terrified because I was living in Jackson Heights again at the time. And I was like terrified to run into Mrs. Costello as an adult. Because I didn't know what she would think. And I was like, oh, she's gonna like, what if she sees me smoking a cigarette or like smoking a blunt on the street? And there was this one night where I was out by myself on around Northern Boulevard and like 83rd Street in Jackson Heights. And I was smoking a cigarette, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw her walking toward me with her husband. And it was late too. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I threw the cigarette away and ran across the street, even though it was a green light, and I like never looked back. And I've recently been having dreams about that again, of like her finding me, catching me smoking. And hilarious, whatever, it's fine. Like it's not, but hilariously, Kate, our singing teacher, has been, you know, she told us the story of like only smoking pot once in her life. And it's just like, don't smoke pot because you're gonna ruin your singing voice, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for listening. Rexylafemme, give it up.
can all the storytellers come up here and take a bow, please? Will you take my phone and take a picture? You know who you are. Please. Thank you. Give it up for Tom Cole, Maya Suess, Belle, and rexylafemme. Yay! I'm not sure when we're doing it again, maybe next week. But make sure to go to Maya's show, which is on
December 4th, and you can follow Unprofessional Variety Show on Instagram, and it's quarterly. It's really fun.
yes. And what's your Instagram?
Tom Daniel Cole.
You?
What's my Instagram?
MX Bell. Oh, Venmo. Okay. Oh, great. MX Bell on Venmo. And Rexy, REXY, La Femme, FEMM. And I'm Drae Biz, or you can follow Tell Queers with a Z at the end. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Buy some books. Have a great night. Have a good holiday time. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you out there in YouTubies. Yay.